don't have any questions in the chat box. Does anybody want to say anything or ask anything?
Yeah, we'll just give a couple seconds here if you want to ask a question.
Turn your mic on and speak up, or shoot something into the chat box.
In some of the news that's going around, there's some that are saying we are headed for a major change in the market, worse than 2008. And I'm not an analyst or enough to know what that might mean, but I've heard several voices saying that now, and I kind of go, okay, what does that mean to these investment strategies if there's something worse than 2008?
Good. I love the question, Dan. Thank you. The first thing to ask is, what was happening in 2008? Is there a structural flaw that has a crack in it? Now, I want to begin by assuring you all that I got slaughtered in 2008. Okay. At that point, we had completely different strategies. We were doing options on futures. You don't even want to know. And in those, you know, when the market gapped down, it did what's called 4 standard deviations down. What that means is it went through the 99th percentile of probability that it would fall that far. And we lost half of our money in that fall. So it wasn't down 10%, it was down 50. I felt ill. I kept in touch with the clients with calls and things like this. But, you know, I was absolutely certain I could never do that again. It wasn't for our personal account. We were invested equally with clients as we are now. But I just couldn't handle that. So what was wrong with the 2008 market? One was the high leverage market in subprime mortgages. Very, very big market. In fact, leading into that, if I had been sort of a good believer in that, and I just wasn't aware, but there were many analysts who were saying a lot of these banks are bankrupt, and they were. Number two, there was government debt that failed. And so I think that was when Russia defaulted on its debt. There were a couple of other countries that followed. And of course, sovereign debt never fails, and yet it did. So those were two. If there is such a fissure in our foundation today, I would put it in the cryptocurrency corner. I do not know what cryptocurrency does. I do not know what their revenue is. I do not know what their earnings are. Therefore, I don't know what multiple they should have, nor what price they should be at. I don't know if you follow that logic, but
yeah,
if you can't do revenue and earnings, then you put a multiple on that. Well, if you don't have earnings, you know, your multiple is infinity. Believe me, back in 2000, when we had the tech bubble, IT, you know, the .com, Nortel was trading at $120 a share. Revenue in Nortel at that time was $2 a share. It was trading at 60 times revenue.
Mm-hmm.
The price of the stock represented the next 60 years of revenue added up and brought back. Okay, that was just stupid. My partner at that time was not as smart as Tarek, so I'm sure Tarek would spot it better than he did. But my partner, you know, I went in to talk to him when it had fallen to $60, and I said, "It's 60. What do you think?" He said, "It's still trading at 30 times revenue. Forget about it. It never had earnings, Nortel." So, you know, we dodged that bullet, as well as many others, Briax included at that time. I don't see the same number of fissures in our foundation. There are some. We've also got probably a more proactive and informed central bank system in North America. I think we've got neophytes in the UK, with apologies to everybody who lives there. You know, the things that they were trying to do to stimulate their economy just weren't going to work. And they're retracting their decisions there now.
And the market priced that correctly, right?
Yep, the market reacted appropriately. So that's one of the answers, Dan. Is there yeah, go ahead.
But is crypto part of the market at all, or is it a separate total place? I didn't think it was in the markets that we're talking about.
It is not in the TSX, but there would be collateral damage. If crypto goes to zero, there will be collateral damage. I mean,
Because
think-
just simply
Go ahead,
because
Dan.
people have lost their money.
And
confidence
I think,
confidence will flee. I mean, right by now we've got at least one country that has turned their currency over to a crypto based. It's like
that's not,
Yeah.
yeah, it was not a good plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think at a high level, what Mark is touching on too is there was that structural issue in 2008, right? So these subprime mortgages were not seen as risky; they ended up being risky. Which is a minimization of the scale of the problem. I would be interested if this article had sort of okay, the world is crashing, and this is why, because also the financial press or press in general. Now I want to be careful how I say this too, because I don't want to be the guy who says the sky is not falling and then it does. But it is bad news is bad news sells. Everybody is almost at any time in history saying this is it. Everything's coming down, and unless they have done the work to say this is why, I would be. It's bad news sells, and that's just the way it is.
that's a good
Yeah.
point. Bad news sells.
Mhm.
I'm just looking here. If you had bought the TSX before the fall in 08, it was at 14,000. Actually 14,700. Again, you wouldn't want to do that ride. But when you're investing for a long time, things do skate their way back. The 14,000 came back in 11, and then it broke through it in 2014 and has basically gone on up since then. So it took 6 years to recover from the high in 08. Now, if you could have timed it, you'd have bought at 8,000 at the bottom in 08 and, looked like a genius. Not many of us are that way.
But yeah,
But you can see what 4 standard deviations looks like. It dropped from 14,000 to 8,000. The market itself
in like a
lost
month.
30%. Because we were leveraged with options on futures, we lost 50%. I never admit that, by the way. I just really don't like to admit it.
Yeah. I appreciate your transparency.
No problem.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Or
Type 'em
more
in.
on it, Dan. What are your thoughts? You're a
I don't
smart
know.
guy.
That's why I'm asking. But I guess when I hear multiple analysts saying we are in a situation that's different than what we've seen before, it makes me wonder, well, then what is the right strategy? And I don't know what that is.
I wonder, it'd be, it's easy to say it's different. The question is, what is different?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anybody give us the clarity of what is different.
Well, the one difference is the amount of debt, just, fiat currency, trillions
Yes,
now
yes,
in
good
debt.
answer.
That's huge.
Mhm.
That's unprecedented in our lifetime, I think, to have that sudden increase in fiat debt.
Yep. Now that's a really good point. There has been unbelievable because of trying to skate COVID back on side and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
The ultimate bandage, if you will. Not exactly great surgery. For sure, the risk is even higher on the bond market when there's this much debt being issued. Now, there is a high correlation right now between equities and bonds. So you shouldn't say, well, it's going to be a bond problem, not a stock problem. That's naive. If there is a bond demise because of all this debt that's been issued, there will be collateral damage on the stock market. I would say it probably won't be as much, and therefore you want to own the premium, bigger cap companies that are a little more international in their scope. That would be my only answer, Dan. It's not a great answer.
Okay.
Anybody else or
Anyone
comments?
else?
They don't have to be questions. You could have some comments to add. Going. Give it a wrap, Tarek.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Expect to see an email in the next couple of days with a link to this video as well as your quarterly statement. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you very much.